Welcome back to the Gun Show VIP edition, my friends. Yes, we're over 80 episodes of the Gun Show, but the VIP edition just feels right, doesn't it? I mean, I know it does to me. We got swag gear, we got coffee, tea, we got drinks, we got all sorts of fun stuff. We got flights, a lot of times through United Airlines. And why might I say that today? And why might in the center of my screen, which you can't see just yet, is my million-mile recognition, which I'm super stoked about. I also have a couple other gifts that I just received today for the first time. So leading into that, you might know where I'm going with my guest today, being from United Airlines, but I'm not going to introduce him just yet. You're going to have to wait just one second. Let's thank our sponsors out there. EBA Growth Systems, you're incredible. Thank you for everything you're doing. The consulting side of manufacturing, so very important, as half of over all the manufacturers work in small shops around the country and don't get enough recognition. I think it's important to bring that up. So EBA, thank you for making sure we're all stable and working well. And then we have our AMT, IMTS teams. IMTS is the most popular trade show in the country every other year. We appreciate everything you guys do to bring the world of manufacturing together. The AMT team, a nonprofit organization that's also doing an amazing job with folks like Peter traveling around the country and creating their own content, which we love to watch and view. So thank you both for being our partners. Now, we'd like to thank a little bit of the MTD team as well, now based in the UK, but growing around the world, or should I say headquartered in the UK, but based around the world. We have presenters and journalists everywhere, and it really is an honor from every single one of us at MTD to bring manufacturing to your TV channels, to your monitors, to your phones. I just read today that 50% of all business is now done from a phone, from a mobile device. So if you're not online, you better get online. That's for darn sure. Now let's get to my guest. My guest today, his name is Varkey. It's a really cool name. I love to say it just like that as well. He is the general manager of airport operations at United Airlines. He's been doing the United Airlines work for about 8 years now. He has a Bachelor of Science from the University of South Florida and a Master's of Business Administration from Florida International University. So if we could all please put our hands together, even though we can't hear you, I'm going to pretend I can, for my friend Varkey. Varkey, thank you so much. I am honored that you would join me on this show. Welcome back to the Gun Show, my friends. This is the VIP edition.
Thank you. Thank you for the invite and for the wonderful hospitality.
Absolutely. That's part of the whole VIP thing, I think. And for everyone watching, you're probably used to having manufacturing engineers on here, right? You love watching the engineers. I know I do as well, listening to the stories they have to tell. But I'm honored because as a million miler with United Airlines, which have been such a delight over the last 12 years, I have received a gift from Varkey today that is this gorgeous pen. I don't know if we can actually zoom in on that, but I'll show you folks later. It is beautiful. It has a map of the world around the outside, United Airlines logo as well. So Varkey, thank you so much for that. And I get my bag that says remove before flight. We'll see if I remember to do that or not. I'll try. So Varkey, you have a unique story. This is not necessarily about manufacturing, but aviation is definitely a part of manufacturing. As I've been into Spirit Aerosystems, B&B Air Parts, I've been over to Boeing, I've been over to France to work with the folks over there at Airbus. I've been around the world seeing how these things are made, but now I get to speak with you. You're on the front lines. You have that day-to-day activity that might stress me out. Maybe you look really calm and handsome. Nice jacket, by the way. But I want to start with your journey. Also, from what I was learning from you, you have a unique journey to get where you are today.
Yeah, so I mean, I didn't grow up dreaming to be a pilot. I take it back. Maybe I did for a little bit of time, but aviation was never something I had originally said, hey, you know, as a child, I wanted to be a general manager in an airport, right? That wasn't something I naturally gravitated towards. I was always fascinated by aviation growing up. It was something that amazed me. You know, we traveled as kids. You know, my family, my parents came from India in the early 80s, so we did go to India every few years, maybe 5 or 6 years or so. We would go to India, and the travel process, it was something that always amazed me. But by no means did I go to college or go to high school dreaming to be in the aviation industry. It'd be neat to fly a plane, never did it, right? Becoming a pilot's very expensive, and that wasn't something that we could necessarily do at the time growing up.
I'm with you.
You know, naturally, I pursued what any other child growing up in an Indian household would try and do, which is, let me go become a doctor. or something in that
I've heard that rumor. Yeah, doctor, engineer.
It's very true. My sister is actually a physician. I'm not, obviously, but growing up in high school, et cetera, that was something that we, looked at and started watching the show ER when I'd come home from school, and I was even more amazed with medicine than anything else. Fast forward a few years, go through high school. My family moved around that time to Vero Beach, Florida, which is very remote, but much less populous than Fort Lauderdale, which is where I was born and raised up until high school. Moved to Vero Beach, life changed a lot. I moved there after 9/11, which was a tough time, obviously, for the industry as a whole, but being in a small rural town after 9/11 wasn't easy as well. So going through those times, changing, moving, getting a new perspective essentially on people, where you're from, when that never really mattered growing up, right? Moving to an area where there's much less diversity, people are a lot more curious to see your background. And when you move right after 9/11, even more curious. So that had its own challenges. And I think in high school, I kind of fumbled with different ideas and lost focus a little bit from an academic standpoint, but eventually survived. Went to college, Tampa, USF. Decided I was going to do accounting. Went from accounting to back to pre-med. Started doing all my prereqs for sciences. But I'll tell you, I felt I didn't want to study at that point in life.
Right.
Didn't study. I got kicked out of my university the first time.
Can I give you a high five for that? Because I got kicked out of 3.
That's awesome.
I'm not sure if we should high five that, but I'm with you, is what I'm saying.
We're here today.
We're here today. That's right.
What matters. So you got kicked out of 3. I got kicked out of my same one 3 times.
Nice.
So I reapplied after the first time getting kicked out.
You're like, I've not had enough. I'm getting back in this.
Got back in it, slapped myself a couple times and said, no, we're going to focus. We're going to get through it this time. Got kicked out again. Went to community college, did my AA, reapplied because you don't get third chances usually. So the third time around, and third and final actually, I decided to focus more on the business side. And with the whole AA, I found a loophole in state universities in Florida. If you were going to apply for something called academic renewal, and if you didn't have as many bad grades, you were able to get reinstated into the university and also have a blank slate, clean slate in terms of your GPA. To do that, though, I had to go to every professor that I had ever had for my first 2 years of college, have them verify that I had never attended a day past the drop ad period, which was the midpoint of the semester. It was true. I really did. And I stopped going to class halfway through the semester, and they could track it, and they all signed off. So I had something like 20 signatures and verifications from every professor, went to my academic committee, appealed the decision, and was reinstated at USF. And from there, I did actually graduate. But it was a loophole that was immediately changed. The loophole was that I could retroactively drop any class I had never attended past the drop ad period. Following that reinstatement, the board, I guess, for the state universities in Florida made a change in their policy. Now you can only retroactively withdraw from, I think it's like 9 classes or 9 credits in your entire collegiate career. So I wish they'd named that rule after me, but they didn't. It just happened the semester afterwards. And, sometimes I tell that story. I've spoken at an event for young leaders for United Way, and one of the things I always talk about is no amount of adversity is ever too much, right? You can fall, but as long as you pick yourself back up and you reorient and say, you know what, maybe it's a different purpose that I'm here for, or something different, and refocus yourself, you can always pick yourself back up. From there, I worked, graduated at USF, did my bachelor's in business admin, essentially, with accounting and management as my 2 focus areas, and then from there started working at AT&T until the job got outsourced, coincidentally, to India.
Coincidentally. Yeah, right.
From there, went to Hertz Dollar Thrifty in Tampa, and then found myself not liking the sales side of it very much, and jumped into airline catering with Sky Chefs, 2014. And then never looked back, stayed in aviation. Jet fuel's in my blood, I guess. So I enjoyed it, loved being out on the ramp, loved the environment, being out there with the aircraft. learning more. And you mentioned manufacturing, and that's what airline catering is, right? It's a food manufacturing facility. So a lot of those same principles with good manufacturing principles and, Lean Six Sigma, those are things you incorporate into every aspect of business. And the airline industry and airport operations is no stranger to that as well.
This is absolutely fascinating for me. I have two immediate questions. One is I want to know what it's like to speak with and for United Way, because I know that's kind of an important mission, and you brought that up just slightly, and I want to dive into that. But before we do, just a quick curiosity for me, because 2018 and 19, I spent most of the year in India. So whereabouts is your family from in India?
Cool. Yeah, Southwest India. It's a little state called Kerala. Southwest tip of the state. So the exact city in Kerala is more in the midtown Kottayam.
Okay, yeah. So I think you're probably talking a little further south than like Goa, because I've been to
Yes.
Goa. I've been over to Coimbatore, which I think is probably a little east of where you're talking about,
Yeah.
right? And then I've done all the big ones as well, from Pune and Nasik and Bangalore and Chennai, and gone up to hike the Himalayas as well. Landed
Wow.
in a great Buddhist town there. Done a lot of work in Mumbai, so Delhi as well. We actually have a film crew that's based in Delhi right now. So anyway,
awesome.
really a cool country that I learned a lot from while I was there. And I remember one of my favorite stories from there, and this is your day and not my day, but one of my favorite stories from there was landing in the foothills of the Himalayas in a place, Leh, Leh. And immediately they hand you an oxygen tank, and like, you must buy this because nobody's used to the altitude we're in. And sure enough, the entire time I was there, I had small like oxygen headaches all through the lower parts of my eyes and around my head. But anyway, that's a different story for a different day. Just wanted to connect on that aspect as well, because I do enjoy visiting India. So United Way. I've had the opportunity to speak for a lot of people on a lot of platforms, and the reason I do what I currently do is because my heart really does go out most times to being of service to others. I love helping people. I've owned a natural healing tea company, and 100% of the profits from that company went to help charities. We took none home for ourselves for the first year or two, you know what I mean? So United Way, because United is someone I've flown with for a long time. What does that mean to you, and what's that been like for you?
Yeah, so the United Way piece of it was coincidental. I was working at the Miami airport at the time and was a GM there. And one of the leaders at the airport was a young guy, and he was a part of the United Way Miami chapter or whatever it is. And they have a group, several different groups targeted towards different demographics that do a lot of good together, right? It's networking. One of them is young leaders, and he had asked me, hey, we have a United Way event for the United Young Leaders. Would you be interested in speaking? And I said, sure. It was a young person that was working similar to him. So it's really, it's kind of amazing, especially when you're speaking to peers, right? You're speaking to other millennials that have an interest in business. They're, well respected within their own careers. But on top of that, they prioritize philanthropy. They prioritize being stewards of the community, good stewards, giving back wherever they can. So, a lot of the things that one of the things I talk about is adversity, right? Everybody, in every part of their life, at some point, you will face adversity. I did in many different ways, and not letting it define you, but letting it become a opportunity for growth is something that I like to talk about with them, because you can kind of see it on people's faces when they're going through something, whether it's professionally, personally, whatever it may be, it's evident. And you can see that, you can gauge that from a group when you're in front of them. And that's kind of what I gauged when I was there. There was a lot of people in transitioning careers, questioning where they're going in their careers. But they joined United Way, that group, particularly to network, to grow their network and kind of see what else they could become. So definitely I think I've partnered with them on a couple other things locally, getting United Airlines involved in more charitable activities locally. It's something that's been a passion of mine, obviously giving back to the community, but also for United as a whole. It's something we do at every hub, every major airport. We are in the community, and we want to continue to grow that as much as possible, and especially here in South Florida. We're not the largest player by any means in South Florida, but we like to think we do a lot of good in the community, and that's something we will continue to do as the years go on.
A small pebble tossed into a big pond can create a lot of ripples. So it doesn't have to be big, small, in between. If somebody's trying, if somebody's caring, for all of you out there who are doing even the small to the big, thank you for doing that for everyone who's listening. You mentioned that you've had a couple of defining moments in your life that have kind of helped you grow, right? Probably pretty tough. Would you mind sharing one of those stories that come to mind?
Sure. I'll talk about, I think, the career change, right? Where I ended up in aviation by accident, right? It was a job opportunity that presented itself when the economy wasn't the best, and that's how I fell in. And it'll also be a little bit of a lesson, right? So being young, fresh out of college, essentially, and starting a job.
Still young.
Yeah.
You're still young.
Yes, much younger then, right? 10 years younger, maybe 11, 12 years younger. But, I jumped into a couple different opportunities that were presented. Big companies, looked like it was good and it was an opportunity to grow. But at the end of the day, you learn not to change who you are, right? And that's a lesson that I probably learned at that point. I was never a salesperson. I was never very much into sales. It's not in my blood, right? Very much an operations person, not so much a salesperson. But, I got into that job. It hurts. And it was something that wasn't necessarily interested me, but it had good benefits. It was an opportunity to learn something new, and I never shied away from it. But early on in my career, I learned at that point the proverb, be as gentle as a dove, but as wise as a snake, right?
I had not heard that one before. Christian, have you heard that one before? No, sir.
No.
Wow, that's a good one. I like that.
It's a lesson in trust. I'm a very trusting person, and especially being young, I trusted a lot of my counterparts, not necessarily understanding the climate we were in. I was young, I was in a position of leadership, and I just started in the company. My counterparts were not so much. They asked me a lot of questions. Oh, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And I gave them my unfiltered opinion, which a lot of times is not the best answer. And from there, I learned that people don't always have your best interest in mind when they're asking you questions and digging and, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed at that time.
At least you learned it young, though. There's a lot of folks out there still learning that decades later. So
yeah, I still learn it today.
Yeah.
It made me really think twice about, people's motivations, but also, it's the nature of business, right? It's a cutthroat environment, and sometimes people grow in different ways. It doesn't make you change what you are, but it makes you learn to listen twice before you speak. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. So from there, and many other reasons, I moved on from a sales environment and said, what are other opportunities? And came back home to South Florida with LSG Sky Chefs, which is an airline catering company, and started there. And that's how I grew to love aviation. But yeah, the transition from that point was a humbling moment for sure. I didn't leave because I left that environment primarily because it was growing to be much more difficult than I ever imagined. And my coworkers didn't make it any easier.
It can be that way. I've definitely made some transitions in my life similar to what you've described, and kudos to you. I know there's a lot of folks out there that listen to this show. There's people who will listen to this show 5 years from now for the first time, and it seems to be something that no matter how old, no matter how young, it takes courage to make a substantial change in our life. And not everyone's willing to do that, but I've found in my life, and it sounds like you have as well, Varkey, is the more extreme movement I make, the more extreme goodness seems to come from it 9 times out of 10. And we've talked about this on the show before. We've talked about it in our own lives all the time about, grass grows where you water it, and also nothing grows in a comfort zone, which kind of contradict each other at the same time, but it's important to leave that comfort zone. So thank you for taking an opportunity to share that. I would like to know more about your day-to-day operations, Varkey, and the reason I ask that is because I am on the outside. I walk into Fort Lauderdale Airport all the time. I walk into airports across the country all the time. And from my perspective, it looks like freaking chaos. There's people running in late, trying to throw their luggage on, mad that they have to pay for their luggage, mad that they're late, mad that they have to go through security lines. I actually got yelled at not too long ago because I have Clear because of being 1K, and the other person didn't have Clear, and the person from Clear gently and politely put me right in front of this other young man, and he's like, what's all these privileges? Why does he get to go in front of me? He didn't understand the system at all. And then the argument I hear from people all the time is, well, I don't fly as much as I used to because we used to be able to just walk in, and now all this security and TSA and my luggage is getting destroyed. Obviously, that's not part of United, but my luggage is getting destroyed. So it seems to me, as someone who's been doing this as a while and is quite patient with the situation, just goes with the flow and the lines, I could see it being chaotic. But is it that? And are you organizing chaos, or is it much calmer behind the scenes?
It's funny that you asked that, and I'm glad. I'm glad TSA and those things are the things that seem chaotic, not our operation, right?
Well, I wasn't going to do that to you.
It's funny. It is organized chaos in a lot of regards, right? I always joke and I say even my desk is organized chaos because it's like one thing after the other, right? This job, what keeps you in it a lot of times, if you like that, is it's so fast-paced and ever-changing, right? Just yesterday, we were talking about it with a lot of customers yesterday. The weather, amongst other things, will cause issues like weight restrictions on aircraft. Believe it or not, aircraft cannot fly if they are overweight or need to be a certain amount of weight if they need additional fuel. As common sense as that seems, obviously the general public that flies doesn't necessarily understand nor care for the intricacies of that.
They don't want to know that I can't fly or my luggage can't go or whatever it might. Right, exactly.
They just want to get there.
Yes.
Right, and that's really the core of it. It's chaotic, right? You have to balance trade-offs in every decision in life, right? Every decision comes with trade-offs. Similarly, yesterday I'll give the example to talk a little bit about how you balance some of that chaos is we get a note, Fort Lauderdale, San Francisco is going to be weight restricted. Load planners are trying to move some numbers around, but we have to take additional fuel, right? Because we're going through weather, leaving Fort Lauderdale, and then en route as well. We're dealing with some storm systems across the country, and to get to San Fran, you kind of have to go through those. San Fran, Fort Lauderdale is a pretty lengthy flight domestically. It's about 6 hours going in that direction. And, the type of aircraft that we're flying, a 737, needs to take a max fuel load to get there, especially if you have some weather. To be able to take 166 customers plus all of that, you're going to have to drop bags or drop customers because we need to get there, and fueling is an important thing. So as we're balancing through the numbers, trying to figure out how many customers, okay, if I take 11 customers and 20 bags off, then we can make it with this fuel load. We reached out to dispatch and said, listen, these people, a lot of them, we have about 40 of them that are connecting onto international destinations, and we have a little bit of wiggle room. What if we take more fuel stop in Denver, where we have some gate availability and we'll probably have fueling done pretty quickly, and take everybody, not have to leave any customers off, whatever. So we made that decision in good faith in operations, sitting there with the phone calls with dispatch, etc. They said, yeah, we're good. We'll create a new flight plan. We'll go to Denver with a little bit more fuel so you can go faster, whatever it may be. Land in Denver, and then make up some time and get to San Francisco. Scheduled at 9 p.m. in San Francisco. We'll probably be there around 10. Most of these connections, by the way, are about 11 o'clock. So enough wiggle room. Made the decision, announced it to everybody, and of course the customers were super receptive, as you can imagine. Not at all. They were lined up wondering, why is my flight going to Denver? I didn't want to go to Denver. I wanted to go to San Francisco. I wanted to do this. And it's like, you're just explaining, guys, this is for your own benefit, right? We want all 166 of you to get to San Francisco tonight and not leave any of you off or your bags off. But people generally, they see one thing and they just think it's guaranteed, right? In the airline industry, if there's one thing and you learn, the only thing that's concrete in the airline industry is the runway. It's constant change every day. So balancing through those changes, you always have to think, customer first, right? You got to prioritize the customer journey. And a lot of that is, balancing some of these trade-offs, right? Where do we get the most, and can we do the most good and the most benefit for the customers? And day-to-day operations, I mean, you've seen it, you travel enough where flying through Newark, a lot of times, especially 2019, 2018, you were guaranteed delays in the Northeast because of congestion of the airways. And it's something that every airline sits there and thinks, how do we minimize the impact? And a lot of it, people don't necessarily recognize that, but a lot of airlines are not as big as they could be in the Northeast because you have to balance customer experience with growth. And it's a big decision to make a lot of times. And, I think United's been very vocal about it, but we've made decisions in the Northeast to benefit the customer experience more than, the bottom line in a lot of cases. We could be larger, but you're going to be guaranteed delays, right? And we don't want to do that. It's already frustrating enough when you're flying and you're delayed. Let's not make that a lot larger of a problem.
So my name's Mike Watkins. I'm one of the principals at EBITDA Growth Systems,
My name is David Kapkovitz, where our mission is to impact lives through improving business performance.
where our brand promise is we'll double the valuation of your company in 3 years.
We have a coaching offering where many small and medium-sized businesses engage us.
We focus on training, specifically management and leadership development training, because managers are central to employee engagement and employee efficiency, which leads to productivity and ultimately profits and our brand promise.
Where we go through the 5 plans. The plans around marketing, sales, finance, operations, and management. Where we come out to your facility and we spend a day with you. We get to know you, get to know your team, get to know your shop, because every shop's unique. To where we can coach you and lean on our 200 years of experience as a team to help you get to your next step in business.
We also provide management and leadership development training. And management and leadership development training is so important from an employee efficiency standpoint, from an employee engagement standpoint, which leads to productivity and ultimately profits. And in many instances, we have states that are willing to reimburse our clients for those expenses.
This is where we meet, have 2-hour calls a month where we talk about these 5 plans. We set in stone a plan for the year and we march along the plan beside you and give you the best advice that we can to make sure that you're successful.
We have a fractional accounting offering because we find so many small to medium-sized manufacturers don't necessarily have that skill set in-house. And it's really important for us to meet our brand promise that we have timely and accurate financial statements. And so we have the ability to come alongside our clients and provide that service.
We also have a matchmaking service. It's different than a brokering service because we aren't bringing a whole bunch of buyers in. We have a very unique group of people that we have a relationship with that are looking to buy our clients because they know that our clients have all of their ducks in a row, their financials in a row, their operations plan in a row, their business plan in a row. So because of that, we're able to bring the best buyers to your table. Therefore, we help you do the diligence and make sure your data room is set to where when it's time for you to exit and you want to exit, we're ready to bring the market to you. We also do valuations and we help you get a good valuation so you understand the number that's realistic to where you know if you want to lean into a matchmaking service.
When we asked a small to medium-sized business owner, what's next? What's the exit plan? Oftentimes they don't have an answer, or if they do have an answer, it's not well thought out. So we provide succession planning services, and the end product for our succession planning services is a succession agreement that can become part of your operating agreement, be given to an attorney for estate planning and so forth. So a very comprehensive offering for succession planning.
We have 5 primary offerings: coaching, training, fractional accounting, succession planning, and matchmaking and valuation.
I am feeling a bit enlightened today. Audience, did we learn something about the air? I mean, I know I just did. Holy moly, because you're right. I mean, as a customer, I'm certainly sitting in that chair, and for me, it just becomes happy hour. You know what I mean? Like, I go straight to the United Lounge, a glass of wine. I'm like, well, as long as my luggage and I arrive before I got to start filming, so be it. Delay me. I don't ever get upset really anymore.
Well, thank you for that.
Of course, of course. But I do see the shortness of fuses that a lot of people have because of the expectation that we purchase something and this is where we're supposed to be at a certain time without ever taking in consideration what you just described, which now to me, I didn't know it before and I was already patient, but now to me that makes all the sense in the world. So I hope the listeners out there are paying attention to this show because that was cool. Your day-to-day operations are constantly new and constantly balanced and organizing chaos. And I think the most important piece that I took from that, Varkey, is that whatever happens, even if it could be infuriating, it's in the best interest of the people who are trying to get where they're going. There's nothing that's done just to be mean or rude or, I can't think of a better adjective to describe the situation at the moment, but it's meant for our own well-being, and I like that a lot.
For sure. We always prioritize the customer journey because that's the most important part of it, right? We don't function without the customers, and we wouldn't be successful without the customers. Another funny one in that regard that I always get questions on is ATC. When you see a delay for an aircraft and it's labeled ATC, I've heard it a million times. Well, it's not raining outside. It's not raining in New Jersey. I just talked to my cousin. It's not raining. Guys,
Can you explain what ATC is just for someone who
gladly.
Yeah.
ATC is exactly what it sounds like, air traffic control.
Yes.
And I have used this analogy sometimes to explain to very irate Northeast Newark customers, because that's where we have the bulk of our ATC. It's just like getting on the I-95. If I shut down 2 lanes in rush hour traffic, things are going to slow down. In the afternoon between 2 p.m. and 8 p.m., that eastern corridor going from South America to the Northeast of the U.S. is one of the busiest air highways, if you will, at any given point across the country. That is one of the busiest places. So, years ago, it was a lot worse than it is now. Now it's much better post-COVID. Pre-COVID, my God, any day you were guaranteed 2-hour delays to Newark. I mean, we'd post delays as early as possible so customers could plan. But because of the congestion on the highway in the sky, you'd need to plan for it. And customers just, people don't understand that. And they shouldn't, right? And we kind of I think all the airlines essentially got to a point where we're thinking more like we have to stop accepting that air traffic control delays are always, inevitable, right? And a lot of that is congestion. If we can revitalize our schedules, use larger aircraft to get more people on a plane to that same destination, we avoid the frequency. And some of our business model has changed in that regard too. I think United publicly put out United Next growth plan a couple years back, which was growing our fleet and growing our airline to really be the best in aviation. Not the biggest. It will be the biggest and best. But the goal is to be the best, and that's connecting more people to the places they want to go with a better experience. Flying on those small regional jets is not the best experience all the time, and especially if you're flying more than 2 hours in one of those. So, doing some of that, modifying our business model, reducing our footprint a little bit in Newark from what we'd planned, helped alleviate some of that congestion. But I'll tell you, ATC is something that when people see, they immediately think weather. There's no air traffic control issue. There's no weather. It's not about weather, right? It's about how many planes are flying at any given time. It's literally traffic control, right?
So a few things that make me think of is first of all, whoever's cussing on the highways, cussing at the planes too. It's just not understanding. Whoever's patient about it is patient with the other.
Absolutely.
We understand what it's like to have congested airways or highways. I'd also like to follow up just by saying that when that does happen, since I have this opportunity to speak about some of my experiences with you and having you here is such an honor, is that your customer service side of things, when something does go wrong, is brilliant. I mean, I'll hop on the phone with them. I'll get text messages on my phone. They're usually organizing pretty well. And if I can get to the organization of what needs to be changed even quicker than them, they're real prompt about making sure that everything that I need is taken care of. So thank you from the customer service side of things, even when things do go wrong. And I know it's, in my opinion, customer service is actually lacked in most areas around the world. Certainly I've seen it in hotels since COVID happened. People just started kind of sticking up their fingers and be like, I don't really care, drooping their shoulders. We'll get to it at whatever point. We're not cleaning hotel rooms anymore. It's COVID, that kind of stuff, right? So thank you and all your service people who might be listening to this podcast. Keep up the great work. We appreciate that. I would love to talk a little bit about what's coming next with United. You kind of hinted a little bit. We're going to be the best. We're working toward that. We're going to be the biggest. That's coming soon. I've seen some things that your guys have posted on social media about new flights coming that will cut flight time in half by being able to get there quicker. I've seen the whole Oscar the Grouch commercials where trash is turning into fuel. I get to see all these things along with you. What's coming that you know about that you can share?
So, I mean, there's a lot of things happening in the aviation industry, right? And I mean, as a global enterprise and as the world turns, there's a need to become a little bit smarter about how we do what we do. And a lot of that is sustainability, right? the Oscar the Grouch, who was our chief trash officer.
Clever commercial, by the way. I liked it.
I enjoyed him. It's nice to see Sesame Street relevant again.
It is.
But it's part of that is sustainability. United, I think, was the first airline to pledge 100% carbon neutrality by 2050, and that's not with offsets, which is an important distinction. A lot of companies go out and say we're going to offset our carbon footprint by, and that's not the same as saying we're going to be carbon neutral, which is emissions, cutting emissions. Electric aviation is something we've talked about and invested in heavily. And boom, supersonic is something that's still yet to come, but it's on the horizon, hopefully. These are all ways to be more creative about how we get people to places, but still, prioritizing the customer experience, but doing it in a way that doesn't harm the environment. We've invested directly in carbon sequestration, taking carbon out of the air, carbon dioxide out of the air, and converting that into carbon and storing it in a way that doesn't damage the environment. So these are ways that we kind of lead the pack, really, in being a leader of the industry, and really for a lot of corporations that are not just in aviation, right? United can lead by example in that regard, and I think we have made those commitments. So, touch a little bit on electric aviation. We've invested in Archer Aviation which they have basically electronic vertical takeoff and landing, I think is what it's called.
That sounds cool.
EVTOLs. Essentially, it's like an air taxi, right? And the concept in what we've said we would launch was in New York, basically getting people out of New York City into Newark Airport much faster and avoiding the congested roadways. For a while, we had an advertising campaign in New York City on the taxi cabs. On top of the taxi cabs, you'd see a live map that would show the distance or the time of travel, not the distance, how long it would take to get from Manhattan to either LaGuardia, JFK, or Newark. Newark is actually much closer in terms of travel distance, because of traffic, right?
Sure, yeah.
It's much faster a lot of times to get to Newark than it is to get to JFK or LaGuardia from Manhattan. So we had that advertising campaign for a while, but really the core of changing a mindset, because in New York, you don't compete with airlines, you compete with airports, right? They're different airport locations, and people are just hardwired to think, oh, well, if I'm New York City, I'm going to have to travel out of JFK or LaGuardia, right? If I'm going domestically, it's mostly LaGuardia. Changing that mindset a little bit. So we kind of, taxi cabs in New York City had live maps showing, hey, it's faster to get to Newark. Take Newark, fly out of Newark. In addition to that, now another thing, because that's a market that's really, really important to every airline. Every major airline has some sort of a hub presence in New York, right? And for us, it's Newark Airport, unfortunately, New Jersey, but it's actually closer, or faster. I shouldn't say closer, faster. And to kind of continue that is using electronic vertical takeoff and landing aircraft that, once they get FAA certification and whatnot, would be able to take somebody like an air taxi from New York City to right into Newark Airport and get on their flights from there.
That's brilliant.
That's one of many. There's been a couple other investments in actual electronic aircraft, larger. A lot of that research is still going on. It's going to be a big undertaking, and I think there's a lot of regulatory hurdles that have yet to be explored and gone through. So I think we're a few years away from that, probably more than just a few, but exciting stuff, because overall, electrifying transportation as a whole, not just flying, but cars, everything else, there's so many things that have to go into play, right? Battery technology is becoming something that's getting a lot of attention. Lithium is not exactly a renewable resource. It's got some competitors out there and people that are trying to create a sustainable option to have battery technology or electric aviation or electric transportation in a way that's a lot more sustainable and less, volatile, because lithium is a volatile substance, right? So I think as that continues to unfold and that technology continues to unfold, I think electric aviation and the rest of it will fall in line, because lithium batteries are very heavy and weight on an aircraft is never a good thing.
Very well said and explained. Except now, I'm gonna kind of need to figure out how to partner with United because I'm gonna need an air taxi for Mexico City,
Yeah.
for Mumbai, for Manila, for Bangkok, for a lot of these cities I go to. We're gonna have to work out how that's gonna work because I actually, honestly, looked into one time I was running behind in Mexico City. I was like, because they do helicopter taxis to the airport in Mexico City. I was like, how much does that cost? I looked it up real quick. I was like, nope, not doing that. I guess I'm just going to miss my flight. It's not doing that. That is such a cool idea.
Yeah, it's something that, the idea is to start it out in like a major hub where there's a lot of traffic. I mean, you'd think LA is next, right? But between those two areas, California, New York, these are markets that we really wanted to start this off in because they would probably have the most bang for the buck with people that really need to get to an airport quickly and avoid, what can be the slowest traffic in the U.S., right? Mexico City, I think, is probably the worst in the world. So, yeah, they're probably next, right? But, all jokes aside, I think it's something that more people will start to think of, right? To your point, it is a helicopter, right? It's a different way of looking at it. If you get bored and look at Archer Aviation and their prototype, it's a pretty neat looking plane. It's got like 6 propellers and they turn. They don't just they start out like vertical and then go back to normal like a propeller like it would to fly horizontally, I guess. But it's a neat idea, and hopefully once the technology is there and once the regulatory hurdles are cleared, it'll be something that we get to call a part of normal daily life.
Well, if my friends in manufacturing have anything to say and do about it, we will get that technology there because we're making all of that stuff, that's for sure. I have one last question for you before we go into the game side of things. And for everyone who listens to the show and love these games, we're going to do 2 truths and a lie today. It's something I'm absolutely terrible at, and Christian can concur that I don't think I've gotten any of them right. Sometimes the audience does, but not me. No, I'm terrible at reading people, apparently, which is not great for me figuring out if people are lying to me. But that's my problem, not yours out there. The other one we're going to do today for the first time, which is going to be fun, is called Rapid Fire Questions. So I have a bunch of questions here that I'm just going to throw out at Varkey, and he's going to answer it as quickly as possible off the top of his head. And some of these might be funny, some of these might be serious. We might even have to edit a few out depending on which route he goes with the answer, because these are unscripted completely. But an example of that would be, what's the funniest reason for a flight delay you've ever experienced or heard of? And he, bubblegum or whatever. I don't know what the answer is going to be, but we'll let him decide what that is. The last question I have for you is, I like to ask people positive interactions when it comes to their day-to-day jobs. So do you have any stories that you can think of where you really were able to help someone, help a family, help a flight, help a situation? Because daily, very obviously, you have to deal with a lot of chaos that you're organizing. But is there one that stands out? And it could be even, something aside from your day-to-day job, maybe something in your personal life, where you were just able to help someone and you'd like to share that as well. But I like to end on a positive note, just really uplifting people that listen to this show and go, wow, that Varkey guy, he's pretty cool. I hope he comes back on the show again.
So I'll share 2.
Awesome.
Because there are 2 really amazing things I've experienced at United in my day-to-day job, but that have affected me profoundly from a personal standpoint. One, I'll go back a year. I think it was last year. Every year, United flies additional flights into Las Vegas for CES, right? And we actually have a nonstop during this time out of Fort Lauderdale. We don't normally fly to Vegas, but every year for CES, we have one nonstop to Vegas. So last year, we have our nonstop flight to Vegas, the one of the year. And inevitably, it gets not just delayed. It pushes back out, comes back to the gate, has a serious mechanical issue, and is delayed for like 5 hours, right? Oof. It's not like we have any other Vegas flight we can put people on. But during this delay, I get a call, hey, we need help with a customer. I go upstairs, and I'm like, hey, what's going on? And there is a gentleman there who is, and I'll say this so you have an idea, he is a Premier Gold with United, meaning he travels quite a bit. And that was what I was told initially. He's a Premier Gold. He needs a lot of help with his travel. So as I look at the gate area, I ask the agents to show me, hey, who is the customer? I look over, and there's a gentleman sitting with a service dog. And as I approach him, I immediately understand that he is he's completely deaf, and he's also blind. and his service animal is really, really very much a crucial service part of his life, and very much a service animal to the degree, because you see a lot of service animals nowadays that aren't really service animals, right? But this is a true one. And they were having difficulty communicating with him, and he was frustrated because, he could tell he was frustrated because people weren't understanding what he was trying to say. He had a device that he was typing in Braille attached to him, and it would pull up what he was saying on his phone. And for him, the way he would get communication from people, because he was deaf, was he would ask that you write letters on his hand. So I would spell out each word on his hand quickly. And, if you were too slow or if you were trying to simplify things, he wouldn't understand.
Really?
And a lot of people were oversimplifying.
That's what I would have thought to have done as well.
Instead of saying, we have the flight is delayed, we have a delay on the flight, they would just write delay without explaining more. And the more as I interacted with him, I started to understand that. And so I was talking and communicating in full sentences with him. He was replying. I said, hey, how about let's get you some food? So we went to the Rocco's Tacos in Terminal 1 and ordered food, everything. I was writing on his hand the whole time. And for me personally, that was like extremely like a humbling and eye-opening experience, because we complain about so much in life as human beings, right? And then you have this man who is, he's blind and he's deaf and completely. He's not hard of hearing. He's completely deaf. And he's traveling. He's going to CES. He's enjoying his life. He's enjoying experiences. And more than anything else, it was a great lesson, and I used it a lot of times with our employees afterwards, was sometimes people that may be differently abled, they don't want to be treated any differently. And we're so programmed to treat them a little bit differently. Let me oversimplify. And that was frustrating for him. Don't oversimplify. He understands everything we're trying to say. For me personally, in my personal life, 5 years ago when I moved back down to South Florida to be a GM in Miami, I was in Denver prior to that with United. I moved down in March of 2018. In April of 2018 and in May of 2018, my father became very ill. My family's here. My dad was diagnosed with ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease. The first thing to go with it was his speech, his ability to speak, his ability to eat, his ability to communicate in a lot of regards. So this particular interaction with this customer hit me in two different ways, right? One, it made me rethink, how my communication with my dad goes, right, day to day. And I understood that because my dad can hear, but he can't speak, right? He would communicate. When he could write, he would write. When he couldn't write, he would use a computer that monitored his eyes, and he would type with that. And part of that frustration for him too, people would speak to him like he had he didn't understand, and he understood everybody perfectly. So maybe that was why I was able to connect with this person a little bit more. But, it was eye-opening for me. It was a humbling experience. And I think for a lot of people, it was just like, guys, things that we complain about day to day, like, look at this. This is an example of, no problem is ever something that we can't overcome. And I think I've probably beaten that point a little bit today, but it was, that was an amazing experience. And the second one, just recently, I think I posted about it on LinkedIn and Twitter a little bit, but something we got very fortunate to host in Fort Lauderdale was the United Fantasy Flight. United does what's called a fantasy flight in several of its hubs, and it is a flight that we take children who are sick, most of them with cancer, childhood cancer, other terminal illnesses, and we take them on an amazing trip to the North Pole. We decorate a plane, decorate the gates. Our employees are dressed up as elves and whatnot.
I saw something about this, actually. Really beautiful.
Yeah, it's an awesome event, and for the first time, I think, ever in Fort Lauderdale, we were able to host it, and hopefully it's something we'll be able to do for years to come. We partnered with Joe DiMaggio and Sylvester this year. The Miami Dolphins also participated. Their cheerleaders, TD, the mascot, and a handful of players, about 7 players came out. And I'll tell you, man, the faces of the children, when they got off the aircraft and they opened their eyes, when they opened the blinds, you could just see their smiles. They were just like, oh my God, because, we pull into a hangar, which is Jetscape, provided the hangar, and they were a huge, awesome partner for us. But they, we pulled into the Jetscape hangar, and it was decorated like the North Pole, and there's Santa sitting there, there's Mickey Mouse, Minnie. They were ecstatic. And I think those are, events like those really put into perspective that what we do, it's, we can call it the hospitality industry, we can call it whatever, but at the end of the day, what we do, it's the people industry. Every day, it's always the people industry, whether it's the customers, the employees, the people that you help in doing these kind of events. That's what it's all about. It's a grounding experience. So,
well, 3 things from that is I'm going to hug you after this show because that was awesome. 2 is I don't know how that segues into games, but we're going to try it anyway. And then 3rd, by no means am I a Miami Dolphin, but if there's anything I can do to support any of those projects on the behalf of MTDCNC and myself, we are happy to do it.
For sure.
More than happy, so let us know. All right, even though that was really emotional, I almost cried a little bit. Would you like to play a couple of games now?
Absolutely.
Well, I've learned a little bit about you, and you've shared so many stories. Do you have 2 truths and a lie that you can give to me?
It's going to be a tough one. I just told you I was born and raised in Fort Lauderdale, but that's like a tough one that usually people don't get.
Right.
Let's see. 2 truths and a lie. So, I'm an avid golfer. I am an avid boater, and I play 3 instruments.
Christian, you remember our guest just the other day that had like a 7-minute story for every single one of his 2 truths and a lie? This one's so much shorter and easier. I don't know if he's lying or telling the truth, but it was so much shorter and easier. I'm going to go with you are not an avid boater.
No, I am an avid boater.
I never get this right. Not ever.
I'm not an avid golfer, though.
Oh, okay. You are an avid boater.
Yeah, and I
Okay.
do not really play. I'll use the term play loosely, but I drums, guitar, and piano.
That's amazing. My guy over here plays the drums. He's got one at the Kravik Center coming up. You should connect after this. So
That's awesome.
I lose that game again, just like always. So what's new? Everyone expected me to lose, I think. I never get that right. All right, rapid fire questions. We'll do, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 of these until you look at me funny and be like, we're done. Stop it. Stop giving me these things. You ready?
Ready?
Rapid fire questions. If you could design a plane, what color would it be?
Black.
A black plane. That sounds
Yeah.
dope, like Darth Vader. Oh my goodness, that'd be a Darth Vader plane. I'd like to have one of those. What's your dream destination that's not yet a flight route?
Ooh, Maldives.
Oh, that's a good one.
No
I almost
commercial
went
flight
there.
route,
I
yeah.
almost went there. Yes, I went to Goa instead, actually. Let's see. Name a fictional character you'd want as your co-pilot.
That's a tough one to pick, man. Iron Man.
That would be cool. If anything goes wrong, he could just save you.
Yeah.
He's just a great
And he'd
answer.
be entertaining on the plane.
Yeah, because, Tony Stark is just a real, well, we'll leave those words out for
Yeah,
now. But
yeah.
he's a philanthropist,
Yeah.
let's say. If airplanes could talk, what would yours say?
No more speed tape.
What is the coolest aviation-themed movie?
It's tough to say not Top Gun, right?
Right.
I mean,
It seems like an obvious one, and it just
Yeah.
came out with the second one as well.
Yeah, I'd say Top Gun probably.
All right, last question for you. I think it's a good answer. Last question for you. If you could time travel in a plane, where and when would you go?
Kitty Hawk.
No
Where
kidding.
it all started.
Oh, what a cool answer for the aviation side of things.
Yeah.
That is absolutely amazing. I really, really, really appreciate you being on our show, Varkey. It's an honor. I always talk manufacturing. We talk about where things are created, but I get to talk to you today. And the position you're in, General Manager of Airport Operations, valuable. Your time, everyone's time is so incredibly valuable. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, and it's a lot less glamorous than it sounds, man. It's day to day, it's operational. We're always out there. Point of my job is to help people.
Well, keep doing that. I certainly appreciate you as a million miler with United Airlines and certainly going back to the 1K world again for 2024. Everything you're doing is incredible. Varkey, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.